your generation will shape the future. You will be transforming our world through your actions and your decisions. You may be the generation that will finally make the world so much better for humanity and for the planet that we live on. So I want to help you with what I've found to be a secret ingredient for transformation. It's imagination. Now, the root of the word imagination is image, and there's a reason for that. Images relax our minds, and when our minds are relaxed, they can be more creative. Do you ever get an aha experience when you just wake up in the morning and you've had a dream? Or when you're walking in nature, or you're looking at art? I wonder why that is. When we get ahas, well, I think of it as, I call it mental spaciousness. The mind is open. The reason that helps us to think better is that the words are not in our way for a change. I'm not against words. I was a writer for many, many years. Words have a function. They're important. The challenge with words, when you're trying to be creative, is words represent something that already happened. Words represent the past and memories, and when you want to do something brand new, they just kind of get in the way. So we use images as a way to help people think together, and that is something that is not typical when you get a group together. But we're doing it more and more. And what happens when you get a group of people together and their minds are all relaxed is that you get a collective aha. And when people are together and you've got a lot of ideas together, that's when true innovation and creativity happens in a group. This can work with people who are very different from one another, from people who don't know each other, and they get together, even if they don't like each other. You can get them together and help them listen to one another, first getting in touch with their own creativity, then putting their ideas together, something happens. I want to tell you a little bit about my work, which involves imagination. So I think of myself as an igniter of imagination. I'm a visual facilitator. So as I said, that means that we get people together and help them think together. I work with a lot of great organizations. I worked with like Edwards Life Sciences that makes heart valves and saves lives. I work with IBM, big organization doing massive amounts of innovation. I work with many nonprofits who are trying to make the world a better place. And my favorite, really, was unforgettable, was going to the Nobel Peace Prize ceremonies in Oslo and working with the Youth Summit for the Nobel Peace Prize. These were people from all over, young people, very young people, all over the world making change. You could see the power of youth for global change. And it's a power that you have as well. How do you activate that? Today, there are so many challenges on the planet. And I want to talk about having a dream about change. Something about this picture that was behind me as I was telling you about my work, I want you to notice that there are a bunch of people hanging old-fashioned paper on old-fashioned walls with old-fashioned tape. And what's interesting is that one of these people, well, they're all technology leaders. One of them is Vint Cerf, who actually did create the internet. How many people use the internet today? That's almost everybody. This is in the early 70s, he created that. He had a vision of the future. And actually, once he drew me a picture of what he was thinking, it was kind of an envelope that went around the world, packet switching. He had a vision. The thing is, now, we were at this meeting at Google recently. He was working with people to talk about what is the future, and his vision is about humanity, the humanness, because he knows that the internet we have today is the result of hundreds and thousands of people imagining together. And that's part of the dream that's continuing. So let's move forward to another dreamer. How many of you used a computer mouse in the last day? Everybody again. This is Dr. Doug Engelbart, died in 2013. He created the first computer mouse and pretty much everything for the personal computer we use today. Now behind him is a big mural. Actually, it was in the previous slide from the meeting at Google. This is one of our tools for imagination. What it is a big, giant mural that tells the history, in this case, of technology, of culture, and of many streams of knowledge. We put them all together in a big visual. Let me go back a little bit to tell you about my job. I work with people by being in a room and drawing pictures while they are talking. So they're coming up with new ideas, we choreograph them, and then we, while they're talking, say to ourselves, what does that concept look like? This is not about fine art, and that's one thing I really like about showing these messy pictures. This is an outtake from that mural, all hand done with people standing around. It's not about how pretty the picture is. It's about having an image that helps us talk together, and we wanted to find out how Dr. Engelbart managed to have a vision that would change the world. So this long mural helped us tell the story of what he called co-evolution, and we got some real insights here. Co-evolution means culture changes so slowly. People change slowly. Technology moves very, very, very fast. What if you can have technology speeding up culture, and then culture using technology? We could start moving a lot faster. We could start solving problems. We can have a vision for humanity and make change, make it real. If we can have, this was Dr. Engelbart's dream, networks of people working together, seeing the same thing. The dream is continuing. On that long mural, you just saw a little outtake from a long mural. It was actually 4 feet by 28 feet originally. At the very end of that mural, we had another wave. This wave is about the future. It's twice the size of the wave in the middle of the mural that you saw earlier. This wave was allowing us to ask a question, which we did in many, many groups, standing around together looking at this mural. And again, very different people, very different factions, saying, what do you think the future will be? And in that meeting at Google, actually this mural's from way back in 2008, and that meeting was just a couple weeks ago. We're still asking the question. And at that meeting, we had a tentative answer, and it was, what if we had an internet, we had an online world that wasn't just a bunch of words, and it wasn't just a bunch of pictures, and it wasn't just entertaining, and it wasn't just a lot of knowledge, but it was really an interactive space where words and images work together to relax our minds so we could really solve problems together. So we've been working on a problem, actually. It's a pretty tough one. The gender gap, a little problem to work on. A lot of people working on this, spending a lot of time and a lot of money. How do we solve this problem of this planet where women do not have the same influence and impact as men? Everybody's wondering, and yet we don't seem to be able to solve it. I'm not saying we can do that ourselves, but we can make a big stride by looking at all of history and saying, when did women actually have leaps of change and influence that they didn't have before? What caused that? Let's look at history, and that's where these big timeline murals come into play. So here we have a mural that's 100 years of women inventors and innovators. And behind, we see the different eras, what was going on in the different eras. Up front here is Joy Montford. How many people have looked at a video on the screen in the last day? Or posted one? Just about everybody again. And that's because of Joy. She created QuickTime for Apple. That was the first graphical media where we had movies on the internet. She and her team thought of that. Interestingly, I had to talk her into being on the mural because she said, it was my team, not just me. And we find that a lot with women really being team-oriented and not really necessarily wanting the spotlight, but we think it's really important. So, how does a mural help us solve problems? When we look at the background in these long histories, we see some patterns that can take us to the future. What's the next wave? We found a pattern. As we sat around looking at this mural with women and men and people of all ages having conversations, started with women, expanded, we came up with a theory. And let me tell you a little bit about that. The theory was that big changes for women collectively tended to happen after there was a social trend, a popular conversation technique in which women talked about themselves, their situation as women, and their responsibility to others. So go back to the quilting bees of the 1800s. People know about that. Women were talking. Skip ahead to the industrial era. Now we have cities, brand new, whole different social structure, children going to work, a lot of exploitation of immigrants, a lot of problems. Then they had what they called women's clubs. And the women had on their nice hats. They went to tea. It all looked very innocent. Actually, they were absolutely taking care of our culture and launching many of the institutions we have today for social justice. And after that, women working together, there was a big leap in the number of women who went to university, getting PhDs, master's degrees. So we see then an influence of conversation on the culture. Leap ahead again. Not many of you probably heard the phrase consciousness raising, but a lot of women who, your grandmothers probably know about this. It was a time after the 50s when, at that time, women were in the home, a lot of times not in the workplace. It was the era of Mad Men, if any of you watched that. And women really weren't front and center at all in culture. Consciousness raising means women got together in groups and said, we're not really happy with this. Let's support each other to make change. And change there was by the 80s. Pretty much, almost, I think every institution, STEM being the last, but that's actually evening out now. But so many women entered the workforce and changed the world. However, the institutions themselves didn't really change. So a lot of times women were working, but they didn't feel like they had as much influence and couldn't have as much impact. So, skip ahead. The next round of conversations, social trend, started by Sheryl Sandberg, was lean in circles. What that meant were women in organizations were talking to one another and to their bosses about how they wanted to have more impact, more egalitarian treatment, and balance with their home life. Made a big difference. Organizations changed. What's next? We asked that question. What's next is the institutions themselves change. Government, education, politics, businesses. They look different. There's more entrepreneurs. So, how is it going to come to be that women will really have an equal, completely equal influence in the planet? We know that certain topics aren't talked about very much. That's what we found. So what we need is more conversation, but this time, conversations where we allow everybody to talk about what's really on their minds. These are conversations between men and women. We tackle things like unconscious bias. There's some, I don't know how many of you have had the experience of talking to a friend and a man says to a woman, that really bothered you? I don't understand. And there really is the need for these deeper conversations. It's happening now. We're seeing this happen, but we're naming it. And now that we have these big murals help us see, it's not just a random thing. It's a pattern, and we're part of a new pattern where there's going to be a big change. We don't know what it is, but we know the conversations are happening. This was an important identification of a trend that empowers us for the future. How did it happen? We just had a lot of people standing around a mural and talking, telling the stories of women in history, and telling stories of a future they wanted to see happen. We asked ourselves, feeling good about identifying that pattern, what if we could scale this so it's not just where the mural physically is, and there's one over there you can look at later. What if we could do this globally and have these important conversations all over the world? We got Bonnie DeVarco, one of our friends in mixed reality, virtual reality, to design a 3-dimensional world. So now we can go and look at the mural with people all over the world and have these conversations, go into a room, see the photographs. You can actually click on the mural and drill down to see the individual stories, but more importantly, look at the long pattern of history. And the history looks different in every country. And talk about how did changes happen in the past? How will they happen in the future? Because of technology, and we're back to the dream of Doug Engelbart, the dream of Joy Montfort, the dream of Vint Cerf, technology leaders who really work to make the world a better place. It's the dream. We can have 3D worlds. We know these from our entertainment and our games, but we can have these worlds not just for fun and entertainment, but to solve the world's problems. We can walk around in images, tell our stories. We can say what we want to be real, and if enough of us agree on what that is, we'll make it real. Let me close again with words capture ideas, images free them, and in summary to say that the great visionaries of our time and you of our future have been able to do that by really seeing what they want to happen. And I want to invite you to go back to the drawing board, which is the theme of our TEDx conference, to go back to the drawing board, take some friends, and draw out what you want to see in the future. To really realize that you can change the world. Imagination is your birthright, and it's something you can carry forward. Thank you.